The restaurant was already busy when the socialite walked in with her friends, the kind of group that made everyone turn their heads without even trying. She moved with confidence that almost felt like a performance, as if the world existed just to watch her enter any room. Her designer heels clicked sharply against the floor, and her bracelets jingled with every step, catching the warm lights of the restaurant. People whispered, some admiring her style, others rolling their eyes at the way she carried herself. The waitress working that day had already noticed the change in the room's energy before she even turned to see who had arrived. She had been clearing a table near the entrance and felt the sudden hush. That strange shift that happens when someone loud in personality walks in. She quietly placed the used glasses on her tray and took a slow breath. Busy shifts never scared her, but certain customers always added a weight to the day. When the socialite and her friends sat down, the waitress approached with a calm smile. She always greeted everyone the same way, warmly, with patience, even when her own day was tiring. She had learned long ago that people often hid their true moods behind fancy clothes or loud laughter. But before the waitress could finish saying hello, the socialite looked her up and down slowly, not even hiding her judgment. The waitress kept her smile steady. She had seen that look before. It wasn't new, and it wasn't surprising. "What took you so long?" the socialite asked, though the waitress had approached them within seconds. Her tone was sharp, the kind of voice meant to make someone feel small. The waitress didn't let it bother her. "I'm here now. What can I get for you all?" she asked gently. One of the friends ordered first, speaking politely. Another followed, but the socialite didn't even look at the menu. Instead, she sighed loudly, tapping her long nails on the table. "Do you really expect me to decide something while you're hovering like that?" she said. The waitress stepped back a little, gave her space, and nodded calmly. "Take your time. I'll return in a moment." She walked away with steady steps, refusing to let the rude tones sink into her chest. But she could still feel the judgment in the air. She could hear the socialite whispering to her friends, making comments about how the waitress didn't look professional enough, or how her uniform didn't fit right. The friends laughed awkwardly, some embarrassed, some too afraid to say anything. A few minutes later, the waitress returned. She hoped the moment had passed, and maybe the socialite would be ready to order. But as she approached the table, the socialite pushed her empty water glass toward her, as if she were pushing something unwanted. "Fill this," she said. Eyes still glued to her phone, the waitress nodded, picked up the glass carefully, and filled it at the nearby station. When she returned to set it down, the table shifted a little under her hand. She didn't spill anything, but the slight movement made the socialite gasp dramatically. "Are you serious?" the socialite said loudly. "Can you not even hold a tray properly?" The waitress stayed silent for a moment, reminding herself to breathe. She set the glass down gently and stepped back. "I'm sorry if that bothered you," she said quietly. "It did," the socialite replied. "Everything bothers me when people don't do their jobs right." Some customers nearby stared, uncomfortable with how harsh she was being. But the socialite was too busy glaring at the waitress to notice. The waitress tried to explain softly. The table just shifted a bit, but nothing spilled. Before she could finish, the socialite grabbed the corner of her apron, tugging it sharply. The apron knot tightened at the back, pulling the front edge hard. The waitress's uniform jerked with it. "Maybe if you didn't wear cheap things that fall apart, you wouldn't be bumping into everything," the socialite snapped. The tug was too hard. The apron's fabric strained and tore slightly at the seam near the top, taking part of the uniform seam with it. It didn't fully rip the dress, but it left a noticeable tear right across the front. The restaurant went silent. The waitress stumbled a step back, shocked not by the damage, but by the suddenness. She touched the torn fabric with trembling fingers. Her face warmed with embarrassment, the kind that spreads fast and burns. A man sitting at a nearby table stood halfway from his seat as if he wasn't sure whether to help. Another customer covered her mouth. Even the socialite's friends looked horrified. "Why would you do that?" the waitress asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I can," the socialite said, lifting her chin. "And because maybe it'll teach you to be more careful. You can't expect people like us to tolerate this level of service. People like us. People like her." The words dug in deeper than the tear in the uniform. The waitress held the front of her torn dress to cover the seam. Her breath trembled, but she didn't cry. She refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of a woman who wanted her to feel weak. Another server rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" the coworker whispered. "I'm fine," the waitress replied, though her voice wasn't steady. "I'm fine. I can handle it." The socialite rolled her eyes. "Oh, relax. It's just a dress. People like you probably have plenty just like it." It wasn't true. The waitress had only 2 uniforms. She washed them carefully every night because she couldn't afford to replace them. A manager approached quickly, having seen the commotion from across the room. "Is everything all right here?" he asked. Before the waitress could answer, the socialite jumped in. "Your waitress tore her own dress like a fool and nearly spilled water on me. Honestly, I don't know how you hire people like this." The waitress opened her mouth to correct her, but the socialite cut in again. "Just bring us someone who knows what they're doing," she demanded. The manager glanced at the torn dress, then at the waitress's shaking hands, and then at the socialite's smug expression. He knew exactly what had happened, but he also knew situations like this had to be handled carefully. "Let's step aside for a moment," he said gently to the waitress. The waitress nodded and followed him a few steps away. She didn't want to make a scene, but everything inside her felt heavy. She wasn't embarrassed about the job or the uniform. She was embarrassed because she had been treated like she didn't matter. "I'm sorry this happened," the manager said. "It's okay," she replied softly. "I'll finish my shift. You don't have to deal with her again," he said firmly. But the waitress shook her head. "It's fine. I can handle it." She wasn't trying to be brave. She just didn't want that woman to think she had broken her. She stepped away from the manager, took out her phone, and sent one short message to someone. "Can you come?" Then she tucked her phone away and straightened her torn dress. The best she could, she walked back into the dining area with her chin slightly lifted. Customers watched her with sympathy, some with admiration, as she picked up a new tray and continued her shift. She refused to let the humiliation define her night, but under her calm steps was something else. Something the socialite didn't see coming. Someone would be there soon, and things would not end the way the socialite expected. The waitress walked toward the back hallway, her steps steady, even though her hands still shook from what had happened. She touched the torn part of her dress lightly, feeling the fabric pull apart where the seam had ripped. It wasn't the dress that hurt her. It was the way the socialite had looked at her, as if she were something less, something unimportant, but she kept her head up. She had learned long ago that some people enjoyed seeing others fall apart. She would not give that satisfaction to anyone. Inside the staff room, she stood in front of a small mirror fixed above a cabinet. The tear was more visible now, under the brighter light. She sighed softly and pressed her palm to her chest, trying to calm the tightness she felt. This job meant a lot to her. She worked hard, stayed polite, and tried to treat everyone with respect. Being humiliated like that, in front of a full restaurant, made her feel like the hours of effort she put in every day didn't matter. A coworker stepped inside quietly. "Hey," he said gently. "Do you need a minute?" She shook her head. "No, if I stay in here too long, it'll feel worse. I just need to breathe." Everyone saw what she did, he said softly. "People are talking about it." They think she went too far." "I know," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. "But I don't want anyone to pity me." He hesitated before speaking again. "You don't deserve that kind of treatment." She forced a small smile. "It's fine. I can handle it." But even as she said it, her eyes lowered in the mirror, and she saw the faint redness forming along her neck from where the apron had pulled too tightly. She took a long breath and reminded herself why she needed to stay strong. She had people depending on her. She didn't have the luxury of losing her job over someone's cruelty. The coworker walked away to give her space, and she stood alone for a moment longer. She reached into her pocket and checked her phone. The message she had sent earlier still sat on the screen. "Can you come?" The reply hadn't arrived yet, but she trusted it would. After fixing her hair and adjusting the torn fabric as neatly as she could, she stepped out of the staff room and walked back into the main dining area. She could feel eyes on her, but she didn't let her expression change. The customers who had witnessed everything watched her with sympathy, some even with quiet respect. They whispered softly, but none of their looks felt cruel. The socialite and her friends sat at their table, laughing again, though their laughter now carried an edge of nervousness, especially from the friends. Some of them avoided looking her way, uncomfortable with what had happened. The socialite, however, pretended as if nothing unusual had happened. She scrolled through her phone, occasionally glancing at the waitress with a smirk. That made it clear she didn't regret a thing. The waitress stayed away from the table unless necessary. The manager had already assigned another server to handle them, but she still needed to walk past their table at times. Each time she did, the socialite watched her with a kind of satisfaction, as if she had proven something. But the waitress no longer looked back with embarrassment. She kept her gaze ahead, refusing to let the incident define her. Minutes passed. Then half an hour. The restaurant kept moving, dishes clattering softly, customers talking, servers weaving between tables. Life didn't pause just because someone was unkind. Still, a small knot of anxiety remained in her chest. She was waiting for a message, for a sign, for the person she trusted to arrive. Her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. She stepped into a corner near the storage area and checked the notification. "I'm on my way." A slow breath left her. She didn't know what would happen next, but she felt a little stronger, knowing she wasn't facing the moment alone. She returned to work, picking up a tray with a few glasses on it. As she walked past the socialite's table, one of the friends looked up and gave her an apologetic expression, as if silently saying they didn't support what their friend had done. The waitress appreciated it, even if it solved nothing. The socialite noticed the glance and frowned. "What are you doing?" she asked her friend. "Why are you looking at her?" Nothing," the friend muttered, turning away. The socialite folded her arms. "Honestly, she's lucky all I did was tear that ugly thing she's wearing. I've had worse service before." The friend's eyes widened. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Oh, please," the socialite scoffed. "People like that know their place. She should just be grateful she even has a job." The waitress heard the words, but she pretended she hadn't. She kept moving, delivering glasses to another table, offering them a gentle smile. Her phone buzzed again. "I'm outside." Her heart jumped a little, not with fear, but with relief. The restaurant doors opened, letting in a small rush of cool air from outside. A few customers glanced up. The waitress didn't turn right away. She finished pouring water for a couple sitting near the window. Only when they thanked her did she allow herself to look toward the entrance. She saw him. A man walked in calm, steady, not loud or flashy, but something about him made people pause. His presence carried weight, the kind that didn't come from wealth or noise, but from quiet confidence. The staff recognized him immediately. A few nodded respectfully, The waitress exhaled slowly, her shoulders easing. She watched him scan the room, and when his eyes met hers, something soft and protective flashed across his face. But before he reached her, the socialite noticed him first. She sat up straighter, smoothing her hair quickly with her hand. Her eyes sparkled with a sudden interest. She nudged her friend. "Look at him," she whispered. "Now that is someone worth talking to." The friend didn't answer. The socialite's gaze stayed glued to him as he walked deeper into the restaurant. She assumed he was someone wealthy, someone like her, someone important. And she wasn't wrong, but not in the way she imagined. The waitress stepped forward slightly, but the man reached her before she could move too far. He didn't touch her yet, though the concern in his eyes was obvious. "What happened?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I'm fine." He looked at the torn fabric. "That doesn't look fine." "It's just a dress," she murmured, echoing the socialite's earlier words, but with none of the cruelty. The socialite was staring now, confused, annoyed, and curious all at once. "Who's he?" she muttered under her breath. The waitress felt a little embarrassed with so many eyes on them. "Let's talk later," she whispered to him. But he didn't step away. He wasn't angry, but something protective sharpened his expression. The socialite called out suddenly, "Hello there," trying to draw his attention. "Do you need a table? I'm sure they can find you a better one than this." He didn't even look her way. He kept his gaze on the waitress. "Tell me what happened." She hesitated. "It's not important right now." "It's important to me," he replied. The socialite frowned. Why is he talking to her like that? She whispered to her friends. One friend whispered back, "I think they know each other." The socialite's eyes narrowed. The man finally looked toward the socialite's table, his expression calm but unreadable. "Did someone here hurt you?" he asked the waitress. The socialite straightened proudly, assuming he was addressing her. Actually, but he didn't even give her a glance. He was talking only to the waitress, and the socialite couldn't understand why. The restaurant felt different now. The air felt heavier. Customers sat straighter, sensing something important was about to unfold. The waitress swallowed slowly. She didn't want drama. She didn't want attention. But she also knew something things were no longer in her control. Someone she trusted was here, and this moment was far from over. The man stepped further into the restaurant, and the quiet shift in the room became impossible to ignore. People who had been busy eating or talking moments earlier now watched him with cautious curiosity. He wasn't famous in a way that strangers pointed fingers at him, but he carried a presence that drew attention without trying. It was in the way he walked calm, steady, sure of himself. It was in the way the staff stood a little straighter the moment they saw him. The waitress tried to stay composed, but her heart beat faster. She hadn't expected him to arrive so quickly, and part of her felt embarrassed that he was seeing her like this, with a torn dress and shaking hands. She didn't want him to worry, but she also knew he would. He always did. He stopped right in front of her, scanning her face first, then the tear in her dress. His jaw tightened slightly. "Tell me what happened, please," he said softly. She wanted to tell him it wasn't a big deal, that things like this happened sometimes when dealing with difficult customers. But after everything, she felt tired of pretending she was fine when she wasn't. Still, she didn't want to start a scene. Before she could answer, the socialite called out again, this time louder, as if she felt entitled to his attention. "Excuse me. If you're looking for a table, I can help. The service here is terrible today." The man didn't turn. The socialite blinked, confused. People always looked when she called. People always came running. The waitress lowered her eyes for a moment. She didn't want him to confront anyone. She only wanted support, not conflict. He gently touched her arm. "Let's step aside," he whispered. She nodded. They walked a few steps toward the corner of the dining area, where it was quieter. But even then, the socialite and her friends kept watching, their curiosity burning. Once they were away from most customers, he asked again, "Who did this to your dress? Did someone hurt you?" She shook her head. "I'm okay. I promise. My uniform just got pulled." His eyes softened, but there was still tension in them. "You're not okay," he said quietly. "I know you." Her throat tightened a little. She felt her eyes sting, but blinked quickly to stop any tears from forming. "I don't want to make a big deal out of it." He paused, trying to understand. "Did someone here mistreat you?" She didn't speak right away. She wasn't the kind of person who liked pointing fingers. She always believed that people made mistakes out of their own frustrations or insecurities. And reacting with anger rarely solved anything. But before she could decide what to say, a voice cut into the moment. "Hey, I'm talking to you." The socialite said loudly. The man turned slightly, his expression calm but unreadable. The socialite stood up from her seat, brushing imaginary dust off her expensive dress as if preparing for a performance. She smiled at him in a way she probably thought was charming. "I don't know what she told you, but the service here has been awful. Honestly, you deserve better than someone like her." She motioned toward the waitress casually, as if she were pointing at a broken piece of furniture. The waitress felt her stomach drop again. The man didn't move or react immediately. He looked at the socialite for a moment, not with admiration or interest, but with a kind of distant confusion, as if he wasn't sure what made her think they were on the same level of conversation. "Is that so?" he asked quietly. "Absolutely," the socialite said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "She bumped our table earlier, and then she tore her own dress and tried to make a scene out of it. I mean, look at her uniform. Cheap material always falls apart." She laughed lightly, expecting her friends to join her, but they didn't. Her friends stared at their plates. Uncomfortable. The man's eyes returned to the waitress. "Is that what happened?" She swallowed. "No, but I don't want trouble." He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. "You aren't causing trouble. Someone else is." The socialite crossed her arms, growing impatient. "Look, you seem like someone who understands quality. People like us don't accept this kind of treatment. Honestly, if you're connected to the owners, you should ask them to train their staff better." The man blinked slowly, as if absorbing her words. And then he spoke in a tone so calm, it instantly quieted the entire air around them. "I'm not connected to the owners," he said. The socialite smiled proudly, as if she had guessed something important. "I knew it. You're just a customer." "Well, in that case," he continued, "I am the owner." Her smile froze. Her friends looked up sharply. A few customers gasped softly. Even the staff members who had already known his identity watched intently, wondering where things would go from here. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The calm way he spoke made it clear he wasn't joking. The socialite blinked rapidly. You're what?" "I own this restaurant," he said simply, "and several others." The socialite's confidence cracked. She tried to recover quickly. "Oh, well, that's interesting. I had no idea. Obviously, I didn't mean anything offensive. I just think your employee—" "My wife," he said gently, looking at the waitress. Silence. A full, thick silence settled over the restaurant. The socialite's mouth dropped open. Her friends stared wide-eyed. The customers who had been watching leaned forward, shocked. It felt like the whole room had been waiting to hear those words without knowing it. The waitress felt suddenly hot all over. Not embarrassed, just overwhelmed. She hadn't expected him to say it so openly, not in front of everyone. Not like that. The man didn't seem angry. But he did look deeply disappointed. "You tore her uniform," he said to the socialite, "and you spoke to her in a way no one deserves to be spoken to." The socialite sputtered for words. I didn't know. I mean, she didn't tell me. She doesn't need to tell strangers who she is to deserve respect," he said. The socialite took a step back. "This is a misunderstanding. I would never offend someone like her on purpose." The waitress felt something twist in her chest at the words, "someone like her." She couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Someone like me?" she asked softly. The socialite stuttered. "I just mean, I didn't know." The man interrupted gently, but firmly. "What you didn't know is not the problem. The problem is how you treat people you think are beneath you." Her face flushed bright red. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He turned slightly toward the staff. "Could someone bring a spare uniform?" he asked. A server hurried off. Grateful for something to do. The socialite cleared her throat, trying to regain some of her pride. "Look, I made a mistake, all right? I didn't mean it like that. If I had known she was married to—" "Respect shouldn't depend on who someone is married to," he said quietly. She froze. His words carried so much weight that even the customers felt it. The waitress lowered her gaze. She was grateful he stood up for her, but she also didn't want to humiliate anyone, even someone who had hurt her. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay," she whispered. He looked at her, then at the socialite. "I think we should discuss this outside," he said. The socialite paled. "Outside? Why?" "I didn't do anything wrong." He didn't raise his voice. "Come with me." Even without yelling, the authority in his tone made it clear he wasn't giving her a choice. She followed him reluctantly toward the entrance, her expression twisting between fear and frustration. Meanwhile, the waitress stood quietly, her fingers still resting on the torn fabric, her heart pounding. She didn't know what he planned to say or do outside. She didn't know how the socialite would react. But one thing was suddenly, powerfully clear. The moment she sent that message asking him to come, everything changed. And nothing about this night would be the same again. The next morning started with a quiet heaviness that sat in the air like settled dust. The news of what happened at the restaurant had moved through the small staff like a whisper traveling from table to table. Some felt angry for the waitress, some felt shocked, and others simply felt sad. But for her, the one who had lived through it, the memory played back in her mind with clear details she wished she could forget. She tried to focus on small things as she walked to work, counting the steps on the sidewalk, listening to the morning traffic, trying to keep her breathing steady. She did not want her coworkers to worry or treat her differently. She wanted to hold on to her dignity, even after someone tried pulling it away from her. When she stepped inside the back door of the restaurant, she expected the usual morning chatterpots clattering, someone laughing too loudly, someone complaining about the early shift. But today, everything stopped the moment she walked in. Every pair of eyes turned to her. It wasn't pity she saw. It was something else. Respect, maybe? Or anger on her behalf. She wasn't sure. One coworker approached her first. He didn't ask what happened. He had seen enough yesterday to know. Instead, he asked quietly, "You okay?" She nodded. She didn't trust her voice yet, so she kept the nod firm and short. He smiled a little and patted her shoulder before returning to his station. Others followed, giving supportive glances, gentle words, or small gestures that meant more than any of them could understand. But the person she did not see was the restaurant owner. Usually he was in by this time, walking around with a clipboard, checking things no one else cared about. Today he was absent, and no one knew why. She shook off the thought and went to change into her clean uniform. When she pulled the apron around her waist, she paused, touching the fabric where the tear had been the day before. They had repaired it for her, stitching the damage almost invisibly. But she still felt the moment like a bruise. She tied the apron tighter and whispered to herself, "Today will be better." But she had no idea that today would bring even more surprises. Her first table of the morning was a quiet, older couple who asked for tea and toast. She served them with a polite smile, trying to settle herself back into routine. But as the day moved toward lunchtime, the restaurant began to fill, and the air grew busier. And the front door opened, and the arrogant socialite from Yest, the morning sunlight, crept through the window. Touching the room with a soft warmth, it felt almost out of place after everything that had happened. She woke up slowly, for a moment forgetting the reporters, the apology, and the tension that had moved into her life overnight. But as soon as she sat up, the memories returned in a wave. She took a deep breath, grounding herself before stepping out of bed. She didn't want fear to guide her day. She didn't want nervous thoughts to decide how she should feel. She wanted to stay steady, even though she had no idea what waited for her outside. Downstairs, her husband was already sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea in his hand. He looked up as soon as she entered, his eyes warm but slightly concerned. "You didn't sleep well," he said softly. She poured herself tea and sat across from him. "I kept thinking about the cameras." He tapped his fingers lightly on the table. "They won't stay forever. Stories fade. People move on." "I don't like being watched," she admitted. "I've always tried to live a simple life." "And you still can," he said. "This will settle." She hoped he was right. After finishing breakfast, she got ready for work. Even as she tied her apron, her hands felt cold. She wondered if the reporters had stayed outside the restaurant. She wondered if customers had heard the story. She wondered how her coworkers would react. Her husband offered to drive her, not wanting her to face the situation alone. She agreed, grateful for his presence. The car ride was quiet but not heavy. She kept her eyes on the passing streets, trying to calm her mind. When they reached the restaurant, her heart tightened. Cameras were still there, though fewer than yesterday. Reporters turned as soon as they saw her. Her husband parked the car and stepped out first, walking around to her side. He opened the door and offered his hand. She took it, feeling steadier just from his touch. As soon as she stepped out, microphones were raised toward her. "Is it true you were insulted because of your job? Did she really tear your dress? How do you feel knowing your husband confronted her?" She didn't respond. Her husband placed a protective hand on her back and guided her through the small crowd. His presence alone was enough to make the reporters step aside. He wasn't aggressive, but he carried himself with quiet authority. Inside the restaurant, the staff gathered at the entrance, watching her with mixed expressions: sympathy, concern, curiosity. She tried to smile, letting them know she was all right. Her best coworker approached her first. "You sure you can work today?" She nodded. "Yes. I want things to feel normal again." The shift began slowly. Some customers whispered when she passed by. Others were overly kind, leaving encouraging smiles or extra tips. She didn't want pity, but she accepted their kindness because she understood people were trying to help in their own way. Around midday, the restaurant owner arrived. He looked nervous again, but in a different way from yesterday. "Can we talk in my office?" he asked. She followed him inside, wondering what news he carried this time. Once the door closed, he sat down and folded his hands tightly on the desk. "I just got off the phone with someone important," he began. "It's about the woman from the other day." The mention of her brought a flash of the memory-sharp words: fingers gripping fabric, humiliation. The owner continued, "She's been facing backlash. Her behavior was recorded from another table. Someone leaked it. People online are criticizing her." She sat quietly, absorbing his words. "She wants to meet you," he added. Her heart dropped. "Meet me? Why?" She says she wants to apologize in person. Properly this time. The waitress sighed. She didn't want to relive the moment again. She didn't want another dramatic scene. But she wasn't someone who wished harm on anyone. When? She asked. Today, he said. She's outside. Her breath caught. Outside right now? He nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. She didn't want to meet her. But she also didn't want to run away from something that needed closure. After a long moment, she whispered, "All right. I'll talk to her." The owner led her to the back exit, where the woman stood alone, without cameras or friends. She looked nothing like the loud, sharp figure from that day. Her makeup was lighter, her posture smaller, her eyes filled with regret. The woman took a shaky breath when she saw her. "Thank you for agreeing to talk to me." The waitress nodded, but didn't move closer. "I came because I needed to say this properly," the woman said. "I hurt you. I embarrassed you. I treated you like you were beneath me. And I was wrong." Her voice cracked. "I've had a lot of time to think since that day. And after the video spread, people started questioning my character. And honestly, they're right. I haven't treated people kindly. I let my anger and entitlement control me." The waitress stayed silent, letting her speak. "I'm not asking you to forgive me instantly," the woman continued. "I just want you to know I'm truly sorry. You didn't deserve what I did. You were doing your job. And I attacked you because I couldn't control myself." The waitress finally spoke, her voice calm. "Hurting someone never makes anything better. It only spreads more hurt." The woman nodded quickly, wiping tears. "You're right. And I want to change. I don't want to be that person anymore." The waitress took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. "I accept your apology, but I hope you understand why that day affected me so much." "I do," the woman whispered. They stood in quiet for a moment, the weight between them finally beginning to lift. When the woman left, the waitress felt lighter, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because facing the moment head on gave her strength she didn't know she had. She returned to work, feeling a calm she didn't expect. Later, when her shift ended, her husband met her outside. "How did it go?" he asked. She told him everything. He listened carefully, his eyes soft with admiration. "I'm proud of you," he said. She smiled. "I just wanted peace." "And you made it happen," he said. They stepped into the evening air together, walking toward the car. The sky was fading into soft shades of purple and gold. For the first time in days, she felt like her world was settling again. But somewhere inside her heart, she knew one more part of the story was still waiting, and tomorrow would bring it. The next morning arrived quietly, with the kind of stillness that almost felt like it was preparing her for something important. She woke before her alarm, her eyes opening on their own as sunlight slowly softened the room. For a moment, she stayed still, listening to the quiet hum of the world outside. It felt peaceful, but she also sensed a shift coming, something she couldn't quite name yet. When she finally rose from the bed, she moved slowly, giving herself time to settle her thoughts. She went downstairs and found her husband already awake, standing near the window with a cup of tea. He was looking outside as if he, too, sensed something new on the horizon. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "Good morning," he said softly. "Morning," she replied, walking toward him. He watched her carefully. "How are you feeling today?" She took a moment to consider the question. "Lighter," she said honestly. "Yesterday was difficult, but I feel like something inside me finally let go." He nodded, setting his cup down. "You handled everything with so much grace. You did more than most people would have been able to do." She smiled faintly. "I just didn't want the anger to follow me forever. It wasn't worth holding on to." They shared breakfast together, quietly enjoying the calm. It was the first morning in days that didn't feel heavy or rushed. No reporters outside. No unexpected phone calls. Just a simple meal shared in silence. Afterward, she got ready for her shift. She still wasn't sure what awaited her, but she didn't want fear to shape her day. She tied her apron with steady hands, took a slow breath, and told herself she would face things as they came one step at a time. Her husband insisted on driving her again, though the reporters were gone. It wasn't about protection this time. It was simply about being present, supporting her through the last chapter of a story neither of them had expected. When they arrived at the restaurant, she noticed something unusual before she even stepped out of the car. The staff were waiting outside, not in fear, not in worry, but in a line as if they had come to welcome her. She blinked in surprise. Her coworker waved at her. "We were waiting for you," she said warmly. The restaurant owner stepped forward, looking more comfortable than the last time she'd seen him. "We wanted to speak to you before your shift," he said. She looked around at all of them, every server, every cook, even the dishwasher, who rarely came to the front of the restaurant. They were all watching her with soft smiles. "What's going on?" she asked. The owner cleared his throat, and for once he wasn't nervous or hesitant. His voice carried a kind steadiness she hadn't heard from him before. "We want to thank you," he said, "not just for what happened this week, but for everything you've done for this place over the years. You've shown kindness every day, even when people didn't deserve it. You made this restaurant feel safe and warm for everyone who walked in." He paused, and we realized we haven't shown you enough appreciation for that. She felt a warm tug inside her chest as another coworker stepped forward. "You've helped all of us at one point or another. You covered shifts when people were struggling. You trained new staff without complaining. You stayed calm when customers made things hard. We see it. We always have." Her eyes stung, but she swallowed and tried to keep her emotions steady. Then the owner continued. "So today, before you start your shift, we wanted to give you something. Not a promotion. Not money. Something else." He stepped aside, and two workers came forward carrying a framed photograph. She frowned gently, trying to see it Dot when they placed it in her hands. Her breath caught Dot. It was a photo taken months ago. She had been wiping a table, laughing at something one of her coworkers had said. It wasn't posed. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Beneath the photograph, a small plaque read, "Thank you for making this place feel like family." Her heart tightened. She never expected something like this. Not from the people she worked with quietly every day. She looked at all of them, unsure of what to say. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Her coworker smiled. "Just say you're staying with us?" She let out a soft laugh. "Of course I'm staying." But the owner wasn't finished. He cleared his throat again. "There's one more thing." He gestured toward her husband. "And it involves you too." Her husband raised an eyebrow, but stepped closer. The owner continued. "I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realized something important. This restaurant isn't just a workplace. It holds experiences, memories, lessons, and sometimes mistakes. The woman who hurt you came back because she wanted to grow. You forgave her because you wanted peace. That alone says something powerful." He paused. "So I've decided to create a small program here. Something to support people who struggle with patience, communication, or emotional control." She blinked, surprised. "A program?" "Yes," he said. "Workshops on understanding others, on improving how we treat people, on managing frustration in stressful situations. Because what happened showed us how quickly small problems can turn into big ones. I want this place to be part of the solution, not the problem." Her husband nodded. "That's a thoughtful idea." The owner smiled. And I'd like you to help guide it. Not teach it. Not run it. Just share your experience when needed. A voice people can learn from. You handled conflict without anger. Without shouting. You showed strength quietly. That's rare. She felt speechless. Her husband placed a hand on her shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. You don't have to decide today, the owner said gently. Think about it. Then he smiled wider. But know that you've already made a difference. More than you realize. She didn't know how to respond, so she simply nodded and whispered, "Thank you." As her shift finally began, something felt different, not just around her, but within her. The fear from the last few days faded. The embarrassment lost its power. All that remained was a quiet sense of strength. She moved through the restaurant with calm confidence, noticing how customers smiled at her, how her coworkers relaxed near her, how the whole place felt lighter. Hours later, when her shift ended, she stepped outside with her husband. The evening air was cool, soft, peaceful. He looked at her with a proud smile. "You changed more than just your own story," he said. "You changed other people too." She looked up at him, feeling a calm warmth settle inside her. "I just wanted things to be right again. And they are," he said. "Because of you." As they walked toward the car, she realized something important. Kindness didn't make her weak. Forgiveness didn't make her small. It made her strong, enough to face the world with dignity, no matter what came her way. And closing this chapter didn't feel like the end. It felt like a new beginning.